the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Authentic Audio Productions, providing personalized, full-service audio solutions for your company, your podcast, professional tools, show hosting, custom content creation, everything you need for the A to Z experience of establishing and getting your podcast listened to, right? I mean, that's what we want here. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com. Thanks so much to all you out there listening to this podcast. We're about 650 episodes deep now. I don't know what we've accomplished. I don't know what we've learned, but that's the point here. We're trying to educate a little bit and have some fun and get some of this nerdy stuff out into the open like this. How about we talk insurable NFL contracts quickly? The takeaway from week 7, at least to date, is going to be injuries, unfortunately, and it's part of the animal, it's part of the monster of the NFL. And when we're talking about the size of contracts that now exist in this league, every injury hurts, not just physically, but it hurts front offices, it hurts bank accounts, it hurts salary cap tables. It's the nature of the beast. Let's start with Deshaun Watson. Take all the extracurricular stuff away from this conversation because there's a lot of it, obviously. Especially with the booing and what's going on in Cleveland. And I get it. It's bad quarterback play. It's a bad team. It's a team that should be contending. And now, well, let's see. There's a lot left in this contract. We know that to be the case. Here's all that matters, at least for today. Per some sources that I spoke to this morning, about $14 million of the $46 million owed to Deshaun Watson in 2024 has been insured. What does that mean? It means that there are some loopholes. That's probably the wrong word. There are some avenues that teams can take if they go the extra mile and pay and take out insurance policies on some of these salaries, that now insurance picks up some of the legwork, and come next February, March, when we're starting to process things for the 2025 league year, there is going to be a bit of a salary cap credit to the Cleveland Browns. I don't have the formula. I'm still working on speaking to some people about how it actually works. I'm sure there's differences between insurable signing bonuses versus insurable base salaries, and that is the case here because of the salary cap conversion that happened to Watson in August. So it's a little bit more complicated than, I can bring to the table today, but 14 million or so has been insured. My guess is, it's going to be around 1 to 1.5 million, right? That actually gets credited back. Just from what I've seen in the past, these things are really lock and key, really hush hush, because quite frankly, we don't want the idea out there that teams are pushing for this for salary cap purposes. You can understand that part of it, right? Nobody wants an injury. The cap credit is just something that comes because bad things end up happening. We get this in the NBA, right? With the roster spot that gets alleviated if a player is out for the year, and you can apply for that exception. These are really unfortunate situations that leagues have built in through CBA, through regulation, ways to sort of help teams at least try to stay competitive in some degree. That's all this is. A competitive advantage for a situation that unfortunately happens quite a bit in this league, but the team has taken the measure to ensure themselves and at least fortify themselves the ability to get some of this back. So long story short, about 14 million insured. We'll see what kind of cap credit that comes out to be in February or March. I'll stick with my sources to try to unlock what that's going to look like. Don't be expecting to replace Deshaun Watson with this insurance policy. Let's put it that way. But it's an unfortunate season-ending injury. There's a few of them to talk about today. In that regard, let's move on. Big injury number 2, Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver 49ers. We talked about him quite a bit with the holdout, with the contract, with the should he have, would he have, where did we end up? And here we are. It seems like a season-ending injury for him. A loss that the 49ers certainly cannot afford on the field, with Christian McCaffrey's status TBD and Deebo Samuel sick and banged up a little bit. And It's an offense that certainly looks like it's going backwards, not forwards, and that's not good news for Brock Purdy and his extension either at this point in time, but that's a different conversation. Brandon Aiyuk has a $20 million insurance policy on his contract, and that spreads out over the next 3 years, but it does include his 2024 compensation, the signing bonus, the base salary, a base salary next year if things kind of trickle into 2025, and I don't think it'll get to that degree based on the reports we're hearing, but same scenario. There's a very real world here where the 49ers use this policy on Brandon Aiyuk and receive some sort of 2025 cap credit. Every little bit helps. These are two teams pushing hard, financially speaking. Now the Browns may start to rip things apart a little bit here and further their cap situation. The 49ers seem invested. And like I said, we're talking about adding contracts to this roster, not subtracting them at this point in time. So you would imagine that they are counting their chickens for this insurance policy and whatever kind of small credit it does afford them, because this is not what you want 7 weeks into a massive contract extension with a player that you battled about whether this should actually happen and whether he should be a part of this club going forward anyway. So it's a tough pill to swallow for everybody involved here. Obviously, these injuries are terrible for the players themselves, but I will say this, because all three of these players we're talking about today have significant contract guarantees. And this is why you sign the dotted line. And this is why we talk so damn much about guarantees on this show and not about APYs and not about remaining fluffy contracts and all that sort of stuff, right? It's not important to me that Davante Adams has $72 million left in his contract because, as we saw, he's not a $72 million player. Okay? He's not a magician. What's important is that Brandon Aiyuk is locked in for the next 2.5 years for injury, for cap, for skill. And he wasn't 8 weeks ago, I should say. So thank goodness for that part of it. But there is a little bit of the team that we'll get back here with some of the insurance stuff. All right. I think the final big injury to talk about here, and there's a bunch, but I'm going to go with Jayden Daniels because it's a situation that was just on the fastest incline that a Washington team has had in quite a while, maybe outside of that 2019 Washington Nationals run in August and September into the World Series. But I mean, sky high expectations for this right now. And I don't know where we're headed. I will say this. There's another contractual part to discuss here, which is Marcus Mariota, his backup, which looks like could be the Week 8 starter. Marcus Mariota is set to make $200,000 every time he plays 60% of the snaps and the Commanders win a football game. So he's already done that once. He will probably be suiting up to do that again in Week 8. So there's big time payout for him if he can stay healthy and if he can continue to win ball games with this team that, boy, looks a hell of a lot more ready to play football than I anticipated. I thought this team was properly aggressive this offseason, certainly when they saw what they had in Daniels in minicamp, and a year away from maybe being a year away, right? So aggressive year one. Let's be aggressive again year two. Let's really start to grow this thing. And then year 3 of the Jayden Daniels experience is when this team starts to break out. This might be the best team in the NFC East right now, all things considered. And this injury is a huge setback for them. Now it's a rib injury. If they're broken, that's intolerable pain for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's just no easy way to fix this thing outside of time and rest. So my guess is he's going to take a week or two off and then wrap up and play through this. It's going to limit his ability. It's going to limit his talent, his skill set. So we're going to have to see, the Justin Herbert part of Jayden Daniels here for the stretch here. But this team appears to be deep enough, especially when Brian Robinson is running the football, and balanced enough, by the way, to win enough ball games in this NFC, which is not deep. Right, especially with teams like San Francisco slipping, which is not deep, to at least hang in the contention for some sort of playoff spot. Jayden Daniels has a 4-year guarantee. Okay. Now it's not hundreds of millions of dollars. It is, however, $35 million, right? Nearly $40 million. It's just good to have it. I just want to reinforce the fact that the conversation needs to go to guarantees every darn time. Okay. It's why it's a negative for Deshaun Watson in a lot of people's eyes. And it's why it's a positive for players like Brandon Aiyuk, who in the middle of a season go through a freak injury situation and now have to look immediately at what's next. Well, his what's next is locked in for multi-years. Same with Jayden Daniels. Now, this isn't a season-ending injury, but it's part of the conversation that we have to have. So one man down, Marcus Mariota up. Marcus Mariota has a chance to, over the next couple of weeks here, to make himself $500,000. And I think with the team around him, he's got a very, very good chance to do exactly that. A couple other things in the NFL. The Daniel Jones and possibly Joe Shane Brian Dable experiment with the New York Giants appears to be trending towards an exit plan. I would say all three of them right now are squarely on the bubble, which is a shame. I think there was a real opportunity there to do things properly, and injuries and certainly some roster decisions have just thwarted every effort that they had. Daniel Jones' contract was never really an albatross to me. And anybody that looks at that and says, this is sinking this organization, is just dead wrong. All right. There's no chance that a 2 for $82 contract, which is what this is sinking any NFL organization right now. It's setting them back because the position that he plays requires success. And that's not happening. And there's not a running game to balance out the deficiencies that come with Daniel Jones. And that's certainly what we're seeing with many of the contending teams right now. If you don't have a quarterback that can take everybody and lift them to a different stratosphere, the Josh Allens of the world, then you have got to have a running game that can not, if not dominate your offensive game plan, certainly balance it out. And the Giants just don't have that. And you can wrap the Saquon Barkley conversation into this as much as you want. I know a lot of people today are waking up and saying the path should have been to pay Saquon Barkley and franchise tag Daniel Jones. That's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly rational conversation to have. I just want to say this one too. Signing Daniel Jones to the 2 for $82 did not in any way make signing Saquon Barkley to that 2.5-year guarantee impossible. No chance. I mean, you saw it play out on HBO. There was a breaking point that the front office had with a running back contract. Clearly it was a running back contract. And the Eagles went over it, and Saquon Barkley was allowed to go and take that offer. That's it. Okay. They could have flexed and kept Saquon Barkley with this Daniel Jones contract, with the defensive contracts they brought in, Brian Burns, etc. And they would have been just fine from a cap and a cash standpoint. They're in the middle of both right now. Okay. There's no extremes on this roster. And now we know where everything stands. Daniel Jones is not a take an offense, bring it to a passing level that can win ball games at a consistent level in this league. He's not that type of player. He needs a lot of things around him to go right. And the Giants don't have any of that right now. Now, Malik Neighbors is a player. Malik Neighbors is going to have the chance to work with a new quarterback next year. I think that's pretty crystal clear. So quickly, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It's a clean cut. There's a 2025 salary guarantee of $12 million that locks in March 16th. That's not going to happen. It's that easy. All right. There is an injury guarantee. So I would expect at some point in time, and we already saw it yesterday, that Drew Lock starts to get a hell of a lot of playing time in this team because there's a $23 million injury guarantee they want no part of. We're starting to see season-ending injuries pile up, as we just talked about here for the opening of the show. The Giants don't want anything to do with that because now we're at the point in time where you have to be concerned about a player getting injured and not being able to pass a March 12th physical. All right, that's the timeline here. Now, there's plenty of other ways to get around things. I would just tell you right now, this team is going backwards. This team is not built to win ball games on the offensive side of the football. I don't think they're going to be buyers at the trade deadline, especially with the Andrew Thomas injury. So this is a holding pattern for 2024. We're talking about a team that does have their draft pick. That's a top 10 pick right now, which should continue to slide down closer to top 5. That's the conversation here, right? That's probably what everybody's thinking about here is the draft pick, maybe alleviating some cap space. Maybe there's a piece or two they can sell at the deadline. Darius Slayton, I would think, would be one of them. That's it. So what happens with Drew Lock, a player that I think when he was brought in raised a lot of eyebrows, especially coming off the Daniel Jones injury. He has similar incentives to the backup quarterback contract that happens, right? So there's playing time. Every time he hits 40, 50, 60% of the snaps in this season, it's $250,000. So there's a chance for $800,000 right there. He's not going to be 70% because we're past that threshold already. But if he's the guy, and I don't think he's the guy for week 8, I think Jones probably starts at least one more game and then we'll have to wait and see. He's got 50%, 40% probably staring ahead of him if he can finish out the season. So there's a chance for him to make $500,000 right there. And then we're talking about completion rate and passer rating and things like that. I'm going to take the playoff berth one out of it for now. But there's a world where he's getting $500,000 to $1 million of incentives to go along with the $5 million that he locked in with the team on the 1-year contract he signed to back up Daniel Jones. So I think a couple things to talk about here, because I'm not sure the Giants are in a position to go all the way back. There's not much to take away, but to go all the way back from a roster standpoint. There's a world where Drew Lock steps in here and actually raises some eyebrows on the field as well. I thought he had a good run in Seattle there when he had his options. We know that good coaching can really alleviate a player like this. He's 27, almost 28 years old. November 10th, he'll be 28 years old. So it's not crazy to think that you're not just benching Daniel Jones at some point, Sue, but you're also giving Drew Lock a legitimate chance to become a factor in the 2025 offseason. I'm not saying he wins the job and you do nothing about the position because you've got this guy and you can extend him. I'm saying he may be the guy you bring in to compete with whatever rookie you draft in 2025. And I think that's probably the correct outlook for the New York Giants going forward. Daniel Jones walks away from this contract with 2 years left and tries to find a backup job, a competing job elsewhere on a fresh start after this upcoming offseason. So just some things that are definitely coming. All right. And you have to follow the contracts. And I'm trying, man, I have been buried in Google Docs and notes for the better part of 2.5 weeks now. And I'm not even halfway done trying to update the contract notes as much as humanly possible with information that I can find and pull from agents and things like that, so that we're all on the same page. So that when you go to look at Drew Lock, you will see the bulleted breakdown of what I'm talking about here with the incentives. When you go to Daniel Jones, you will see now everything about this injury guarantee and everything about the cuts and what's going to come next March and the vesting dates. We are working towards not just educating, but also we're going to start bringing these things to player pages, right? So as Drew Lock approaches 60% of the snaps in the regular season, we're going to have a tracker for that, so you can quickly see exactly how close he is to the next $250,000 incentive and things like that. Those are all things in the works. We're trying to become as data driven as possible. That's the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. But any questions on this stuff? Anything you think I'm missing that we can get onto our pages with the data or some ways to track it that could be better? That's obviously the goal here. So please reach out at SpotTrack on any of the socials right now. Let's flip the switch to baseball quickly. The World Series is set, and it's exactly what Major League Baseball wanted 7 months ago. It is Ohtani versus Judge. Goliath versus Goliath. All right. Although I think the Dodgers starting pitching maybe limits their ability to be true Goliaths, but man, did they put a spin into this National League postseason. They can hit the ball. And by the way, Ohtani really didn't even get that hot. So when Tommy Edmonds win an NLCS MVP awards, you've probably done something right from a roster construction standpoint, and they certainly have. That's an August acquisition gone extremely well for one of the biggest franchises in all of sports. We don't need to talk about payrolls. You know where these teams stand. You know where these teams would have stood if Ohtani's contract wasn't deferred. You know my thoughts on that. It's the reason Yamamoto's on this team. He's probably going to start game 1. It's probably going to be Cole Yamamoto, which is pretty damn good stuff. And we get Ohtani and Judge pretty much right out of the gate. And oh, by the way, let's not forget about Mookie Betts, who's already under contract for forever with tons of deferred money, by the way. And let's not forget about Juan Soto, who, if you follow me on the socials, saw is about to break the bank. And not because of his ALCS home run. He could have gone 0 for the ALCS. He could have been the worst player in the ALCS. And he still would have garnered $500 million as a baseline. That's just where this player is because of his ability, because of what he can do. He is a above average outfielder based on the metrics that we care about when he tries. And he is 26 years old this Friday. 26 years old in free agency, which is just the craziest thing ever. Okay. Nobody's getting there this young. Nobody. Now that's going to change because we got a hell of a lot of 20 and 21 and 22-year-old kids not only getting to the league, but starting and playing and becoming superstars by the time they're 23, 24 years old. We saw it all over this postseason with every single team. It's becoming a younger, fresher league. That's good for free agency. We want players getting to free agency before they're 30 or 33 in some of the cases with the players we're seeing this December. All right, it's just a product of the system. You can bury guys in the minors, or players can come in not ready and bury themselves in the minors and then eventually graduate into the pre-arbitration system. And then the clock is on for 6 more years. All right. And that's why, most guys go 2-3 years in the minors. They come up when they're 23 or 24. The clock starts there. And by the time they get to 6 years of team control, you're 29 going on 30, 30 going on 31, 31 going on 32. That's the conversation quickly. Okay. Aaron Judge, who is, by all intents and purposes, the best single hitter in all of baseball, including Shohei Ohtani. Okay? Including Ohtani. Nobody has had a more impactful wins above replacement WAR stat on an annual basis when he's healthy, obviously. And he hasn't been hurt that much. He's kind of got a bad rep on that one. When he's healthy, then Aaron Judge. What he has done consistently for 162 games as a member of the Yankees, even now within this $40 million contract, makes him the best hitter in baseball right now. But Aaron Judge was not 26 when he did his free agent tour. Okay? He was 30, going on 31. He started his 9-year, $360 million contract at the age of 31, which is standard. I just told you, that's just sort of how things shake out for most players. So there's no world where Aaron Judge is getting a 14-year contract. Okay? Most teams offered him 8. The Giants went to 9. The Yankees matched it. That's why he's on a 9 for $360 with the Yankees. And it looks phenomenal, by the way. That's how they got to the $40 million salary. Okay? You can't get wrapped up with AAVs too much in this league. Now, I put out the Soto number, mathematically speaking, based on age, based on production, based on the last 2 years, based on all the contracts we have in the system that are worth a damn right now. Our algorithm says 14 years, $514 million. I understand that's $36 million a year. I understand that's less than Aaron Judge. I understand that's a mile less than Ohtani. Context matters. Now, you tell me that Scott Boras and Juan Soto want to care about AAV and APY. And it's important that they become the highest paid single position player on an average basis in baseball history. That's great. I'm telling you right now, there's not a team in the world that's going 45 a year at 14 years. Okay. You got to take Ohtani out of this. Okay. Shohei Ohtani did not get $700 million because of what he did at the plate. Because quite frankly, what he did at the plate plus the stolen bases this year wasn't happening until he decided to not pitch for injury purposes. The two things have to be separated. Shohei Ohtani, the starting pitcher, plus Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, is worth $700 million. We cannot start saying just out of nowhere that now Juan Soto should be approaching that number because he's 26 and one of the best hitters really ever to this date from a statistical standpoint. Those two things have got to be separated. Shohei is a true unicorn. If he had just been a hitter, a DH, would he have been a $700 million player? No. Would he have been a $600 million player as of last year? No. But now we know exactly what he can do as a DH. And it's filthy. We have to go with what we have, which is metrics of single position players. And that's what we're using for Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts, Francisco Lindor. The biggest hitters with the biggest contracts in the game. Okay? That's what this has to be based on. We got to take Ohtani out of this. We just have to. All right? It's not like putting up quarterbacks against other quarterbacks, running backs against running backs. It's not even like putting Pete Alonso up against other first basemen, Freddie Freeman, etc. This is different. Okay? Judge belongs in his own conversation. Soto now belongs in his own conversation because of his age. And Ohtani has to be in a bubble way away from everybody else. All right? We got spoiled because of this one season where he didn't pitch. And he was able to flourish as just a DH thinking about one thing. Getting on base, hitting home runs, and swiping bags. It's incredible what we saw. It's an incredible season. But from a market valuation standpoint, Juan Soto has got to be tempered a little bit. Do I believe that Juan Soto will approach $600 million? I do. Okay. So I get how crazy things can get. And this player is worth it. And if Juan Soto does anything from a notoriety standpoint in this World Series, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't swing the pendulum a lot, but it just does. It just matters in baseball. It matters more. What I'm telling you right now is, without Ohtani factored in, because it can't, with every other massively important, productive, high-paid player in baseball, just the math alone says Juan Soto is 14 and 514. That's it. Now we go up from there. Now we let Scott Boras do his thing. Now we let 6 or 7 teams come in and bid this thing up. And the fun begins. So to me, there's the only world where it's less overall money is if he decides, I don't want to be locked into 14 years. I don't want to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't want to be Bryce Harper, who's, rightfully so complaining about the 13-year contract he signed because halfway through it, he's underpaid. And that's the deal. You get a 14-year guarantee. It's going to come with a tempered APY, a tempered luxury tax salary. That's the trade-off for the team. We're guaranteeing you $550 million, but in return, you're going to account for as much as Aaron Judge costs the Yankees on an annual basis, which is $40 million a year. So don't get caught up in the fact that Juan Soto is this transcendent player that can both get a 15-year contract and a $50 million AAP. That's absurd. Okay. That's absurd stuff. Did Ohtani get it? Yes. Even with deferred money, Ohtani's CBT, his luxury tax salary, is $46 million and change. That's after the deferred money. It should have been $70 million. I get it. It's 46 on the books for the Dodgers for the next 10 years. Should Juan Soto have a deferral system in place so that he can go Ohtani massive, but still come down with CBT salary? Yes, but he's not Ohtani. Juan Soto ain't giving him 7 innings. It's not happening. Okay? I don't even think he's the most productive overall hitter in baseball right now. He's one of them, and the age amplifies all the valuation stuff. Big time. All right. He's 4 or 5 years younger than any other player is going to be. at this stage. So there's a lot of reasons to continue to push that envelope forward. But all I'm telling you, to me, the only thing that matters to me right now is that what he's done, what his age is, and where things are headed this winter with the climate of Major League Baseball and the overall tax salary and everything already says $500 million plus. That's the floor. So he can go and show his stuff for the next week and a half and get more teams jazzed up for what's coming this winter, which is going to be a massive tour with Scott Boras for the next big contract in baseball. And by the way, it's crazy important because of the uniqueness of it, because of how young he is. It's really important to reset a lot of things that have gone backwards in Major League Baseball's free agency. And I'm dying to know where this lands. I'm dying to know what this player who can do this thing at this age lands on a contractual standpoint, because we've got players coming up, right? We've got young talent coming up that a few of them won't take the pre-arb extension, right? The Bobby Witt Jr. contract, the Corbin Carroll contract. There's going to be a few, maybe Gunnar, that don't sign that early contract, take it to the finish line, and become this next version at 27 years old. So I'm dying for that. We've got to get ourselves on the right path of what does that look like? Because again, we cannot put Soto and Ohtani on the same road. They are on parallel roads that never connect. But Soto will set a new market, and there's a lot of young kids that can play ball that are going to be looking to his contract this winter to where we go next. One last thing real quick, then we'll get the heck out of here. The WNBA finals were freaking fantastic. If you care about basketball in any regard, if you wish college basketball still had this kind of veracity, you should rewatch these games, okay? Especially last night. A Game 5 elimination game, winner takes all. It's in New York. They freaking packed the Brooklyn Center. I don't think the Nets are going to do that once this year, looking at their roster and talking to Keith Smith about how this season's going to unfold. But the Liberty did. And you can talk about the refs and the calls. I watched it. I'm with you. There was definitely some foul play happening. Maybe not intentionally. I think the moment was big for everybody. And I'm going to include the refs in that. That place was cranking. All right. It is as good a women's sporting event as I have ever witnessed on TV, ever. I'm talking World Cup soccer. I'm talking everything. It lived up to the billing. It went to overtime. You had superstars who were struggling that came up big in the end. You had a random MVP in terms of maybe the third or fourth option on the New York Liberty. Everything about it was just bonkersville. And by the way, it's the first championship for a New York team in the WNBA. So you've got a New York team winning that. You've got Yankees, Dodgers in the World Series. And, all the usual suspects in football are playing at the top of their game as well. It's kind of going how they want it to go, right? From a betting standpoint, from a league standpoint, from a rating standpoint, from a revenue standpoint. And as I said to Brandon last Thursday, one more season as things currently stand in the WNBA. And then I promise you they're going to rip things up and start over. I know there's still not a profitable league. Okay. There's not a situation where everybody's making tons of money in the WNBA and it has to start trickling down. They're going to have to borrow from the future to start paying these players better. But that's exactly what has to happen. It has to. You have got to make these women bigger superstars in every right because they deserve it. And if you've watched even 3 minutes of last night's game, there's no way you can argue that point. They deserve it. And they deserve to have the money come with it because that's the talking point that really drives some of these fans. It just is. I know that's selfish of me to say because of the market that we follow, but it's just been a fact. When you can attach this element to it, it becomes more interesting, positively and negatively, but more interesting. There's more. That's why betting is what it is. I've got money on the Chiefs. I'm going to watch the Chiefs. It's just how it is. Okay. So I promise you one more season, they're going to rip it up. Caitlin and that class is going to become extension eligible. The CBA is going to be ready to go. And there'll be some sort of better situation for the league. You just saw the NWSL, women's soccer in America, rip themselves apart and take away the draft. Okay, it's just a rogue free agency. Buy your players like European soccer. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun to track. It's brand new for America. I like it. I like how, and by the way, their salaries are approaching $1 million. Okay, we've got the Trinity Robbins of the world, at least from reports. We don't have any of the actual salary numbers because they don't disclose them yet. But they're flourishing now 25 plus years in. WNBA is at that point, and it's going to get there. So phenomenal finish. Just an absolute dot on the exclamation point to what has been the season that they dreamed of. And let's keep it going from here. We've got the WNBA Primer live on Spotrac.com. Every team's offseason outlook, cap space, free agents, thoughts, the works, draft capital, and we'll lock those in when the lottery gets here. And oh, by the way, there's an expansion team, the Golden State Valkyries. So we've got an expansion draft coming. You've got team protections coming. It couldn't be more interesting to follow the WNBA right now. Please do it if you're not. It was worth every single minute of my time as I flipped away from the worst Mets game of the season. For Scott L., my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spotrac Podcast.